Greetings! Today we're going to be talking about Southeast Asia, and this is of particular interest to me as I lived there when I was a boy. I'm the little one in the picture up above here from around 1965, and here from a few years ago on one of my return trips where I was involved with some participatory mapping, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the lecture. Southeast Asia is a crossroads of cultures and environments. As we shall see, this blends elements of Asia with those of Australia. We see two broad regional divisions, as illustrated on the map: the mainland region and the insular region. In this case, insular refers to islands. Some of the major geographic qualities associated with this realm: state morphology is a theme for this realm, and we can see represented on this slide that Southeast Asia includes 4 of the 5 dominant types of state morphology. The ethnic mosaic of Southeast Asia today reveals a number of ethnic groups that correspond closely to the political states in which they are found. And we'll also see a variety of ethnic or indigenous tribal groups in the mountain areas of mainland Southeast Asia, as well as a variety of indigenous groups that are found in Indonesia, in the archipelago islands that include Borneo, Sumatra, and others. The Austronesian expansion helps us to understand how this region of the world was originally populated. This map illustrates that some 3,700 years ago, people migrated southward out of China, eventually populating most of this island chain before expanding outward into the Pacific. So when we look, for example, at the Indonesian population, which includes Malays and Filipinos, that those people were actually descendants of the migrants that came out of southern China. And we do find the remnants of the population that was there before the arrival of these new migrants from China, and they are known as the Negrito people. Eventually, European colonial powers came into this region and colonized the entire region with one notable exception. Now we're going to explore each of the 2 dominant regions, starting with the mainland. Myanmar, also known as Burma, is a country that has been much in the news of late. This is disconcerting considering that after years of being isolated for its treatment of minority populations, democratic elections had created a lot of hope that there were changes happening in Burma, but sadly we find yet another case in which a humanitarian crisis is unfolding, specifically around a minority population of Muslims. in this Buddhist-dominated country. Former Indochina, which includes these three countries, which are also predominantly Buddhist countries, a characteristic of the mainland region, share a number of common characteristics about them and some things that differentiate them as well. Vietnam, of course, is closely related to the United States as a result of the war that ended almost 40 years ago, over 40 years ago. We have an ongoing relationship as a result of large numbers that have settled in California and increasingly part of this Pacific Rim economy. Cambodia, another country that was involved during the Civil War, during the Vietnam War. There was actually a civil war that ensued. You can see some of the consequences, tragic consequences that resulted. A country that's been emerging in recent decades, but is still a very poor country. Less connected to the world economy than is Vietnam today. Likewise with Laos, again, a complicated history with the United States, and a landlocked country that continues to be among the poorest in the world. The Kingdom of Thailand is unique in the region and is the most prominent of the states on the mainland region. This is the strongest economy and the largest population, and is also an important tourist destination, and one that I recommend. It's a beautiful country with a fascinating culture, very warm people. I worked on a project that involved modeling using geographic information systems of land cover changes that have occurred in parts of northern Thailand, much of it created by stresses put on from China's demand for resources and other global economic changes. And so this particular project looked at how the land cover is changing as a result of these various demands projected through into the future. And this gives us an example of one of the powerful capabilities of geographic information systems, the ability to be able to project potential changes that are taking place and to compare them with existing changes. And just as a reminder about this growing and expanding field that is at the center of geography and some of the technological advancements that have been reflected in our wider society. Next, we'll look at the insular region, which is dominated by the islands, but you'll also see influences from the Malay Peninsula that extends down from the mainland of Southeast Asia. And this is a place that is ideally suited to the study of biogeography. Indeed, this is the region where biogeography originated as a field of study and is particularly associated with Alfred Russel Wallace. And Wallace, as we see in the image here, was a seminal figure in not only biogeography, but in the theory of natural selection or evolution that is most associated with Charles Darwin. His work was centered in what he called the Malay Archipelago, more commonly known as the Indonesian Archipelago today. And perhaps his most lasting legacy is Wallace's Line, which is a line that divides the species that are associated with Asia, as illustrated on the slide, from those that are associated with Australia. There are a variety of factors that are contributing to a decline in the forest and the productivity of these great tropical rainforests. Obviously, tropical deforestation. A picture shown here that I took from the airplane as we flew over Borneo, and you see the oldest rainforest on Earth being cleared for palm oil plantation. So, start off by talking about Malaysia, a fragmented state with two distinct portions, one that is connected to the mainland. This is the core of the country, and the part that is out on the island of Borneo, which is considered a periphery. Kuala Lumpur, the capital, is a modern city, a developing city. There is a thriving high-tech economy, manufacturing of products such as computer components, that has made this what some call an Asian tiger as a result of its growing economic influence. East Malaysia, on the other hand, is a center of resources and has experienced significant issues and concerns related to the conservation of these diverse tropical rainforests, as well as concerns related to the indigenous inhabitants of the island and their rights to land and resources. As I mentioned, the oldest rainforest on Earth, tremendous diversity of species that are associated with these warm, moist tropical forests. Borneo is home to among the greatest diversity of plant species found on Earth, found here in the middle of the image. And there's a wide array of plant species that have yet to be discovered, many of which have medicinal properties to them. The indigenous inhabitants of the island have a profound knowledge of medicinal properties of plants, for example, and sadly, most of the once nomadic people have been settled, and in many cases, these people are taking wage-earning jobs in the cities because they find it difficult to survive in the forest. The adoption of technology tends to be very utilitarian in its purpose. If it serves as a function supporting communities, then it is embraced, but sadly, many of these technologies have actually alienated the people from their traditional life ways, and the destruction of the forest has been one of the most profound effects, although the construction of large-scale mega dams has created an added stress, and there's efforts by various groups, including the Borneo Project, which I've been working with for some 20 years, that have initiated and supported indigenous efforts to resist the projects that are causing the displacement of native peoples, and we have seen some success as a result of this effort. For example, the Baram Dam project is currently been shelved, and indigenous people have been given access to land to create their own economic development. A promising step forward. Science is beginning to recognize the importance and the value of the role that Native people play in conserving forests and in reducing the effects of climate change. There are a variety of projects that have been initiated, one of which is the participatory mapping and GIS program that I've been involved with for, again, dating back to 1995 for this particular image. And we have brought in some of the new technologies, and these in turn have allowed for showing alternative ways of development and encouraging more native control of land and resources. Of course, tourism is an option that many places, including places in Borneo, have looked to as a possible way to provide an alternative method of economic development that doesn't involve destroying the forest. Singapore is a city-state, and a very wealthy city-state at that, the wealthiest country in Southeast Asia, and it is sometimes compared to Hong Kong, which is also a predominantly Chinese island. Another microstate is Brunei, which is known for its oil reserves and is found on the northern coast of Borneo. And then there's the great archipelago island chain of Indonesia. This is the official motto of Indonesia, and you can see the breakdown of its population, which is very diverse across this vast chain of islands that includes over 17,000 islands. This is a diverse place in terms of ethnicity and religion, so you see that Islam dominates throughout Indonesia, but we have pockets of other religions. For example, the island of Bali is a predominantly Hindu population. You can see predominantly Christian populations coming in the eastern part of the archipelago. This is a volcanic island chain and has seen the consequences of this very unstable land environment. This is before the Christmas 2004 earthquake and tsunami, and the conditions afterwards. The result was over 300,000 fatalities across Indonesia and other parts of the region. That illustrates just how devastating the tectonic activity, which is created by the subduction of these two neighboring plates. You'll recall the process of subduction and how this generates volcanic activity and earthquake activity. I mentioned the crossroads of these two great realms, the Asian and the Australian realm. We saw this firsthand on the small island off the coast of Sulawesi that included the world's smallest primate and one of the smallest marsupials. The spice trade is a famous part of this story from hundreds of years past, and to illustrate just how rich and profitable these spice islands were in the remote regions of Indonesia, you can see the real estate swap that took place between the British and the Dutch back in the day. This is the most diverse ocean environment on Earth, and is one that has been experiencing serious decline as a result of coral bleaching, overfishing is playing an important role as well. And this is having cultural effects locally as well as the obvious loss of biological diversity. And then closing things out here with the Philippines. This is perhaps the country that is most closely related to the United States, a one-time colonial possession of the United States, and one that is still has a strong relationship with many Filipinos found in California. That's the end of my lecture. We'll see you online.